Brian, did this movie really get bought for $25 million? Is that
Yes,
what I
sir.
read? $25 million from
Yes.
the Sundance Film Festival.
Yes.
For what is effectively an actual indie film.
100%.
100% indie. And if the film is going to be on Apple TV Plus.
Yes.
I believe
TV
next
Plus.
week, the 13th, I believe
Correct.
is when that comes out.
Yes.
And it's called CODA. CODA means Child of Deaf Adults. Stars Emily Jones as Ruby, who is the child of the deaf adults, who are her parents, played by Marlee Matlin, and Troy Kotsur, and her deaf brother, played by Daniel Durant. And they are fishermen in Massachusetts. And it is the story of this high school senior girl, Ruby, who is kind of resigned herself to life as her family's avatar, if you will, into the hearing world.
Yeah, she's not deaf.
She's not.
Yeah.
But then something happens, and she realizes that there's a world that she might want something other than working on a fishing boat and dealing with the fish buyers back on the dock for her deaf family.
But there's also some other stuff in there that she does love her family and she doesn't resent them necessarily.
Oh, no. This is a very nuanced set of characters.
I mean, she is a teenager. She makes teenager decisions, but she's also a really remarkable person.
Yes.
And I think that's what kind of sells the story for me more than anything else, is because she just, it isn't like she's just this selfish, unmotivated, whatever.
No, she's very dedicated to her family.
Yes. And loves them immensely.
Yep. But she actually joins choir for a typical high school reason.
She likes a guy.
She likes a guy. But she also likes to sing.
She does.
Because she lives in a deaf family, she just knows that she likes to sing. It turns out that she actually can quite well. So that starts to maybe open the doors that she needs to consider. And so we have this coming of age story and this family dynamic. Now, you saw this first, and you were like, you told me you were going to watch it, and I was lucky I was able to watch it. I was trying to decide how good the movie is versus how good this movie is. Well, and I'm going to try to explain that badly once I let you answer it.
Okay. Look, I think that as far as the story goes, we've seen a lot of coming of age stories. There are elements in this film that are very familiar. But the world of the deaf community is something I don't think a lot of us are familiar with. And through Ruby, we get to see a really sympathetic and beautiful exploration of the deaf community as something that is as vibrant and, I mean, the thing that makes this movie special is the actors are actually deaf, and B, it's funny, but you're never laughing at them.
No.
It's a situation where you're laughing with them, and I think that there's a lot of ways that this story could have gone wrong.
Yes.
And here's the I ended up doing some interviews and stuff for this, which was really an unusual process because we had a translator kind of
And
doing
over
the
Zoom,
in-between.
I believe, right?
Over
Recently.
Zoom, yes. So it was not the easiest thing, because there's a part of you that just wants to watch the person sign, and so
Right.
you're like, I don't, oh wait, I'm asking questions, I need to, but I I have said this before, but what I want from cinema is to go to places that I couldn't get to on my own. Learn things that my life didn't necessarily, give me the opportunity to learn.
Right.
And so that's why I watch a movie like this and just love the humanity of it. And it's, there's, some of the tropes of mom and dad or embarrassing and et cetera, et cetera. And they are, but they're also, I mean, as far as like uh, what a couple who are in love
Right.
and who have a healthy relationship, I don't know that you'll see a better relationship in cinemas this year or almost any year. There's definitely, I don't know, a little dirty mind to it.
Right. For sure.
But that's how, I mean, but that's who they are. And it's not they're not asking to be viewed. I don't know. It's just honest. I guess that's I think what, a lot of times we see a coming of age story and it just isn't quite real.
Right.
But it's the ones that mirror experiences that feel real that really resonate with us. And while I am not deaf, I feel like I have a much greater understanding of the world that they live in,
Right.
and the hardships and but even more than that, how capable they are. And I go back to when I was 10 years old. Marlee won the Academy Award for Children of a Lesser God. She was 21. I was 10 years old. I remember watching her speech on television, and it literally informed the way that I saw deaf people for pretty much the rest of my life. Because for me, if you winning, at 10, if you can win an Academy Award, you can do just about anything.
Right.
I mean, as far as I was concerned as a kid, you might as you're walking on the moon. That's rarefied. And so I think we talk about representation sometimes and how it's important for those who are being represented. But I also think, I mean, you can't help but watch this movie and suddenly you're more interested in the deaf community. I mean, I work in a job where I get press releases from School of the Deaf and Blind every couple weeks. This week when it came, I read the entire thing. And it's just essentially a newsletter. But suddenly, the community is more alive to me, and it's because of this movie. And to me, that's really exciting for me as a person, because here I am, halfway through my life or whatever, and there's still parts of the of life that I'm excited to learn about. And that's why I love this film. I love getting to talk to the actors, getting their kind of, perspective. And essentially, these are people who grew up without a lot of movies about their own community.
Right.
And this movie would have meant the world to some of them. And it's great that Marlee's in it, because talking to Daniel said throughout his, he's growing up, and everyone said, well, she won an Oscar. Yeah. You can be an actor. You can do it. And now, he's in a movie with her. And I don't know. I mean, it's a fantastic movie that goes beyond just being a fantastic movie.
Right.
It transcends to something else. And I don't know. As you can tell. I mean, I'm excited for people to see this movie.
Okay. I also I also enjoyed the film quite a bit, and I really think people should see it. Remember when Sound of Metal came out?
Yeah.
With Riz Ahmed. I may or may not have mentioned at the time that film, I was closer to that film actually than I am this one, because a couple years ago I almost went deaf in one ear. Luckily, they were able to go in and fix it, but until they did, I was deaf in one ear because I broke one of the bones in my ear. No bones, no sound. That's so I understood what Riz Ahmed was going through. He didn't understand, and it was frightening. It's like, well, I'm going to lose this thing that I've always had, and I love to listen to music and watch movies and listen to people talk. And so for me, so I could get it. I could identify with him on that really basic level. But that film also gave us that look inside the deaf community from a wider deaf community standpoint. Now this film, there's a lot of the tropes in this film. She joins choir because of a boy, and then as soon as they do, that they're going to get paired up. That this is going to happen, and that this is going to happen, and that this is going to happen. You mentioned honesty in the film and why some films don't work. You're right. This film, when we're laughing with all the characters, especially, what are your intentions?
Sure. I mean, it's one of the greatest dad interrogating,
right,
or intimidating, the boyfriend scenes.
But the not boyfriend, I know, right?
Yeah.
So the reason I think it's so honest is that we're laughing with them and not that at them, is because what this movie does is show that every experience or moment or situation that they're dealing with as a deaf family, there's either a direct or a near direct parallel to the hearing community.
Absolutely.
If you have a family, you have seen this situation and this situation. If you have a sibling, you have had this argument. If you have a family business, you have had this argument. So the fact that they're deaf, you're right. It shows how capable they are, because they're doing the exact same shit as everyone else, and they're dealing with exactly the same shit, plus the communication barrier, which is where Ruby comes in.
Yeah.
But I think that's why the film feels so honest, because there's really nothing in the film except for they can't hear, but with Ruby they can. So even then, it's not really that much different. There's nothing really foreign at that level. You know what I mean? So you just have to kind of accept the deafness as almost a character quirk as opposed to a physical limitation.
Yeah. And
the only reason that works in this film, despite everything else being so formulaic in terms of Ruby's situation, because we all know how that's going to play out. We know how that final scene is going to play out. We know all that. The reason everyone needs to see this film, and the reason this film is so good, is precisely because the four people in the family, the music teacher and the theoretical boyfriend, those, and even her best friend, those performances are all uniformly so good, that it elevates what could easily just have been a kind of run-of-the-mill rom-com with a deaf family. And that's why I don't think people need to see it because it's got a deaf family in it. You're going to learn some stuff by seeing it, and it's got a deaf family in it. I think you need to see it because the performances in this film are so incredibly good that you are doing yourself a disservice as a film fan if you do not go watch these people interact.
Well, and this, there, gosh, there's so many things that we could talk about. This was originally, there's a French film that this is based on.
Yeah, actually, yes, I forgot about that.
And the French film that it's based on was not as sensitive or well written, and did not necessarily cast deaf actors in roles. It was not particularly loved or embraced by the deaf community because the deaf community was not involved.
Right.
And I think what makes this different is it is written and directed by someone who is not deaf, but it's written by, so essentially someone took a script that was in French, turned it into this different beast. They're farmers in the French one,
right.
Rather than made it a very specific thing,
right.
Dropped a couple of the side stories, and then literally had to, once she translated into English, had to figure out how to translate that into sign language, and had to do all these things. But it was because she knew that this could be an important movie. But in order for it to be an important movie, she needed help, and she needed people from that community to be actively involved in it. And it sounds really easy. I mean, it sounds like, well, duh. If you're going to make a movie about deaf people, you should probably, write it in collaboration with people who are actually deaf.
Right.
But it is done so rarely that, I mean, it's amazing. But yes, the performances in this, are outstanding. And Emilia,
Emilia Jones.
Yeah,
is Ruby.
Emilia, she didn't know sign language. She's British. She wasn't a singer. So essentially, Emilia, who's the main Ruby in this film, she is British,
right?
So she's playing an American teenager. So that's she had to have a dialect coach. She didn't know sign language, so she's got to have a sign language coach.
Got to have an ASL coach. Yep.
Yeah. So she wasn't a singer, so that's another thing that they had to do because essential. It's important in this story that not only does she like music, but she's actually good at it.
Yeah.
And you have to a certain extent, convince the audience that she is, that she is, there's a talent there. And it's not just a plot device.
Right.
So, I mean, that stuff's amazing to me. And what some people might not realize is there are regional sign language things. Like it's kind of like accents or phrases and
dialect.
Things. Yes, it's you don't
really
think about that.
And they're in Massachusetts. I grew up in Pennsylvania, which is not Massachusetts. And so the difference between Massachusetts and Pennsylvania is huge. I moved to Texas. The difference between Pennsylvania and Texas is huge.
Yeah.
Is huger. And now I'm out west. That's even more ridiculous. So she's learning. She's going from British English to American English to Massachusetts American English to American Sign Language with regional sign dialect.
And
I'm fairly certain that's ridiculous. I don't even know if that's possible, but
I don't know. But she did it, and it what's and talking to them, none of them were fishermen. Well, there's a whole different dialect among fishermen.
Yep.
There's a whole different. I mean, there was so much. I mean, that they had to explore, and maybe I'm not surprised. I don't want to make it sound like how in the world how could deaf people do this, or how could it's not that. It's just sometimes when you see how difficult something is, and when someone pulls it off in a way that is so genuine.
Yeah.
It's hard to not be a little surprised because you don't see it as often as you would hope. I'd love for every movie to be this exciting for me. Like, I'd love to watch every movie and walk away and go, wow, They really nailed that. I learned stuff. I was entertained. It was funny. It was, it was heart wrenching at times. It was, again, it's a coming of age story that's really packed with love.
Mhm.
It's not about angst really, even though there's some frustrating moments and things in there. It's so, in a way, a beautiful story that is all about, self-sacrifice, and the willingness, and maybe needing permission to not sacrifice.
Right.
I mean, there's just so much. There's layers in this film that I just loved,
Yeah.
and character dynamics and things. So I just, it's going to be one of my favorite films of the year. I'll be talking about it in award season.
Oh, it should be.
So, I mean, and the thing is it is a lot of times these, art house type films are not that accessible. And that's the total opposite of this one. This one is so accessible. And again, that's part of what makes it so good.
Yeah.
Is the accessibility.
Unlike the last art house film we talked about.
Yeah, well, I love Green Knight. I love the Green Knight, but
it's not this accessible.
No, it definitely not. So,
but no, this one, it again, but again, the honesty of this one, but again, I think just because of the universal nature, it's everyone and deaf. But again, that's that could be, and it could be everyone and any foreign language, immigrant,
yeah.
They could have been running, these could have been Indian immigrants running a bodega.
Sure.
And and you will have recognized all of these situations. So it's, again, the universal nature of it. It shows us a segment of society that hearing people don't necessarily think about or deal with, but it's done in such a way that it's recognizable and understandable.
Yeah.
And that's the magic of this. All of the shortcomings or predictabilities of any particular story element aside, the fact that you see everything in a good way. You're not in like a roll your eyes kind of familiarity. But again, the performances for me are what makes this movie so good.
Well, and there is that saying that some things are cliche because it's true.
Yeah.
And so there are aspects of this film that I think, yes, they feel a little cliche because, well, at some point or another, someone has realized that they're attracted to somebody. And the awkwardness of that is compounded by the awkwardness of them,
right,
that they bring to the situation or whatnot. And I don't know. I just, I like really good coming of age stories. And I think that, this was one.
Oh yeah, no, I completely agree. So yes, definitely end of year. This should be around. Since it's only August, or it's August, yeah. So it shouldn't get forgotten.
I hope
come
not.
Awards season. I don't see how it can.
Which, to go back to where we started on this, Apple TV brought this for $25 million.
Yes.
Why did they do that? Well, I can tell you, it wasn't because they necessarily thought we're going to make money. They bought it because it's a really good movie that they wanted to be able to showcase on their, platform.
Right.
They saw it. They knew that people liked it. They loved it. 25 million, for a streaming service that's only been around for a year. I mean, the advertising, let's say it makes an Oscar run, that's going to be huge for them.
Mm-hmm.
So, the price tag, do I think it will make money? I don't know. But they didn't buy it to necessarily make money. They bought it because they wanted to and this is like completely backwards from Hollywood, but they wanted to be associated with a film that they thought was wonderful.
Wow, that's crazy.
Which I know, it's like, well, isn't that how it always is? No.
No, it's always, well, that sounds like a wonderful film, but are we going to make any money?
Yeah. So
this one, it's like, yeah, we're not going to make any money, but man, it's a wonderful film.
And wouldn't it be awesome to be the people who bring that to, I mean, yes, they're financially motivated, but not
about this film.
Not necessarily, no. They're thinking long term.
Yes.
They're building up a reputation or whatnot. And how are you going to do that? You're going to put out great movies. And so that's what they did. It took Netflix a while to figure out that's how you do it.
Right.
They're still trying to figure that out sometimes, I think.
Sometimes.
But Apple obviously recognized that this was a great piece of work, and that's why they paid $25 million for it. And I don't blame them. If I had, it's like, if you had $25 million and you can spend it on a really, really good movie, or you can spend it on something that's guaranteed to make money, I might, being the person I am, just say, no, I'd rather have the good movie. I'd rather be remembered for the good movie.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Anyway, so that's CODA on Apple TV Plus. Which it's like $5 a month. Some ridiculously.
Like $5.99. Yeah.
But the selection's not huge.
No, but it's
not
good.
Netflix or Amazon. But yeah, the quality level's pretty consistent.
Yeah.
If you've been on Netflix, you know that sometimes, well, that looks good. Click up. Well, maybe not. I don't think Apple's really had any of that yet.
No, I mean,
I think they're a little more discerning.
Yes.
They're not bulk buying.
No, and they're, and they are creating a lot of stuff in house, but yeah, I think there's a quality control there that's much higher. And I think that they would rather build something right than build it quickly.
Yep.
So, it's only going to be a matter of time before they have as much content as, a lot of other places. But, it might take a while. But, I mean, there's a lot of stuff that's on Netflix or Hulu or whatever that you'll never watch. So,
Fact.
With a, it's almost with the limited amount of stuff that they have, it's easier to find what you're going to like. And you can almost, you can just assume that if it sounds appealing, you're probably going to like it because they do their stuff pretty well.
Yep. Fact. So there you go. That is CODA. Check it out if you have access to Apple. And if you don't, go peruse Apple and then consider $5 a month or whatever it is on Apple TV. And it's good stuff. It's really good stuff. So we've got a couple more films to talk about. We're going to get to those, so stay tuned for those. But until we do, stay safe, take care of yourself, have a good time this summer. We're running out of weekends before school starts. But, we're getting there. The world is still turning and films are still coming, so we'll talk about those. But until we do, I'm Mark. That's Ryan. Bye, Ryan.
See you guys.
And we'll talk to y'all later.